just been doing this all week so far, and I'm really loving it. So here's another day on the list. Keeping it maybe a little shorter today. You know, it's a Sunday, so no need to work too hard. Let me get this out of the way a little bit here. I want to just do one thing with the background around this box. Let me see if I can add things on here properly. Okay. The computer that I use to actually stream things, when it's streaming, takes a while to do anything else, which is usually fine because I usually don't do anything on it, but trying something right now, trying to just find an image. Let's see how this looks. Oh, gotta bring that, there we go. So that's an attempt at a background. Obviously it clashes a little bit with the blue border on the camera, but that's kind of neat. Let's see if I can edit this, use a different image for a minute. Maybe this one will look better. These are normally things I would imagine people do offline. That's kind of cool. Okay, so that's my first attempt at a generated background. If you have been watching or can watch other stream, the other streams I've been doing, some of them I've been working on. Let me pop into the scene here. I've been working on some code that just generates those backgrounds randomly. So I have right here the files 2 and 1 that are the background that I just put on the other scene. Anyway, it's unimportant to what I'm doing today. So today, let me get this going here. I've got my Emacs still open. I was working on yesterday. It is the 7th today, right? Yeah. I was working on I want to make this little program that generates backgrounds. The idea is it outputs a valid SVG, which you can then pass into or convert somehow into a PNG, which I might add into as an export option in my little program myself. But the implementation I have uses it actually doesn't use shell. I don't need that. It uses Garden and Hiccup, which are compilers. CSS compiles stuff like this. Let's say you wanted to style a paragraph and you give it padding 2 pixels and margin 5 pixels. If you run this CSS compiler over it, it gives you a string of valid CSS, right? So paragraph, padding, margin. Maybe you want it to say pixels there normally, but anyway, the point is, what I want to do is eliminate Garden and Hiccup as dependencies. So I'm, for the sake of this program, making an extremely minimal version of those compilers. So this here, CSS, actually let me print line that. I have an implementation that I worked on last time called my CSS, and it does it'll give the same results. There's a lot of features missing, but I only need it to print this shape of CSS, so it's pretty okay. Now, similarly, HTML can do, the Hiccup HTML compiler can do quite a bit of stuff. This is a paragraph, right? In fact, I can make it work the same without this empty, there we go, empty map in there. But I can put a map in here and put in some features directly. So I could do ID, and I could give it an ID, right? So if I print line that, make it a little clearer, print line this nonsense. Oop. Something went wrong there. Right, see it, whatever attributes you put in as key value pairs here in this map plunks it right in there into the tag. So I have a not complete implementation. This should, I don't think this works. Yeah, so this is my current work in process implementation of my HTML compiler. So it mostly correctly puts the map into there as attributes, but it incorrectly makes this is wrong. It shouldn't have the parens around that, and it also, the real HTML, the real one by like the Hiccup compiler, lets you nest items in it, and it works just fine. So this is a div inside a paragraph, but my implementation doesn't do that. It doesn't run properly on the inner part of it, and that's because I haven't done the proper implementation yet. So I need to basically like recursively call the compiler on the inner parts. But the problem is I don't use recursion quite enough to be like, oh, just whip it out like this. I always mess stuff up and I confuse myself. So today I'm just going to try kind of slowly, little by little, work through that until I have something that actually works the way it should. So work on my HTML minimal compiler to replace the Hiccup dependency. And then after that, if I can get it to work, let's see if I can get it to work. Try run rbg.core in both CLJ and Lumo, and Lumo is here is a Clojure script REPL that runs inside Node.js, so it doesn't use the JVM. So I want to use that because it actually runs faster. Like if I run here CLJ, if I time that, so you can even see it like it takes a while. Right, so it didn't even work because I commented out the dependencies, so it won't load the proper dependencies. But it took 12.5 seconds to do that. It might be faster the second time. Yeah, it is. So I guess when the JVM warms up or something, it can go a lot faster, but 4 seconds is still quite a bit. I'm not sure I don't know what this all means, but anyway. clear that. Point is, Lumo's faster, so actually, maybe I can time Lumo eval to ×2. Did I do it wrong? Clearly. Maybe I have to actually write eval, I forget. There is an eval, I forget what the flag is. -E. Oh, it's got to be a string. That's why. Right, so Lumo, time Lumo, e of this string, 0.3 seconds, 0.3, 0.3, 0.31. Right, so it's relatively fast. But if I do CLJ, right, it's much slower because it's booting up the whole JVM and loading the Clojure code. I'm sure if I like do fancy stuff with compilation and all that, it could run way faster, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Point is, I want to see if I can make it run in Lumo. So that's why I'm getting rid of dependencies. That is what's up there. Before I just get into things, if there's someone watching now, anyone watching now, thank you, I really appreciate that. I noticed on my activity feed here that there was another follow. I either missed it while I was streaming or it was a follow later on, but thanks for that, Cody Boy, it says. And you know, feel free, anyone watching these live or after, go ahead and chat, go ahead and follow, all that stuff. I'm really enjoying doing this, and I'd love to keep the momentum going, see if I can get people interested and involved, that kind of thing. It'd be really awesome. If you're just there chilling out, you like this as background noise or distraction or anything, and you don't feel like engaging, I totally get that. That's all good too. But you know, any little bit of interaction is always nice, so you go right ahead. And I'm gonna just get some code going. So right, let me find where, first of all, I can get rid of this. This was just a function I was using to test something. Snippet. Right, so I'm working right now on this bit of code here and this bit here, snip to HTML. Right, so what this currently does is destructures. So a snippet generally has the shape of this. It's in a vector, it's got a tag keyword, it has optionally a map with attributes, right? And then it can have content, which can be a string, or if I want to follow proper hiccup syntax, it can be a list of other hiccup items. It can be just any number of hiccup items, not in a list, but directly in there. It can be a string. It can be, yeah, so that kind of stuff. So that is the general shape. Actually, I have to check something. HTML. Let's make this div. Let's imagine it's got an ID of container, right? And then it contains, not in a list, but just directly, paragraph, first para, and then next. Oops. and then last paragraph. Right, so that should all work. Yeah, so it is a div that just contains 3 paragraphs directly. They're not nested in there, right? So this should end up being equivalent. If I pop those things into a list like that, it should end up being equivalent. Looks like it. Yeah. So, excuse me, the point I'm trying to just confirm to myself is that these aren't in a list. These are just like directly in there. These are wrapped in a list, but it produces the same result. So I kind of want it to be able to do that, I think. Right? Where you could have it either way. So I'm going to think about that, but the first thing I want to solve actually is my HTML will run on this line, right? It'll have ID test. Okay, what I want is, these are single quotes, which I think are probably fine, but I do want to match the hiccup, oh, typing the wrong way here, the hiccup HTML, which pastes in their escaped double quote characters. So is that, oh, string, I wanted to do this. Oh, I'm just throwing away all the rules, assuming that the computer knows what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I've just confused myself. Now if I print line that, it should print a string that contains quotes. Yeah, okay. So that's kind of what I want to add to, where is that? It's gotta be here. Yeah. Right, so let me see if this will work the way I want it to. See, this is, okay, I don't need to wrap it in a character, in a char like this. I should be able to just escape this directly, but that messes with, yeah, that's not going to be good. It's messing with my paren matching in org mode here in my Emacs setup. So that's fix Emacs to properly account for escaped quotes like this. Currently it messes with paren matching, making it impossible to properly make functions containing those. Yeah, okay, so that's a problem. And it's a problem I don't want to solve right now, so I'll just leave this the same. That I forgot that that's why I did that. But you see that? So as soon as if I were to, this should work just fine, right? A double quote there. But see, now this incorrectly assumes it's in a, right? See, it doesn't, it's ignoring that this is an escaped character, and it works now, it matches the paren properly. But if I were to send this to the REPL, in the REPL, this is wrong, right? So I need to properly do this, I need to add this here, and now it's correct in the REPL, right? So if in fact, like, I could be very confusing and do this in the REPL, and it'll spit out things the way I want it to, but then that doesn't match the code written in the file. So that just breaks your brain a little bit. Right, so HTML, this should now look the same, right? It does, because of what I was just doing. Oh, there's an extra space there, but that's okay. But here, wait, what's going on in here? Let's see, this is just weird. It's just not correct. Okay, that's a problem for another day. There. Oh, right, I put a space in there just in case there's, wait, no, that's right. There's multiple attributes. I'm in the wrong context for that. There. Right, so that's now that. So my HTML should now have the single, yeah. So that's good enough for now. We'll leave that be. So that means the next set of things to work on are, well, the next obvious thing is this. If I run the HTML compiler on this thing here, and it happens to contain some content as a string, right? It puts that into the tags properly. So my HTML doesn't. Right? Oh, I did the wrong thing. There. It puts it in a list. And the reason for that is I have to figure it out. Snip to HTML. That, right, so the problem's not in my HTML, it's in snip to HTML, which is right here. So this is where I'm going to start looking for things. So what it does first, it takes the key M in content, it creates the opening and closing tags with this function. It then does a check here. If M is map, if M is a map, that means there is a attributes map there. If that's true, then you set M to be M and content to be content. If that's not true, you set M to be an empty map, and you conj content onto M because M is going to just be part of the content. Does that make sense? What happens if you conj something onto nil? Oh, no. It will never be. Yeah. this was a test function which I actually erased from my code a little bit earlier. If you pass nothing into a function that expects and var args like that, it does return nil, right? So okay, let me test that. Well, snip to HTML. This, if M is not a map, right, that'll be this situation here. I have line or paragraph, and I have content here, right? So the content, or M, is not a map, and then there is no further thing. So conj content M ends up being this, and properties is apply string map to this, right? So if props, what happens if I do apply string to map of adder to HTML of an empty map? What does that do? It's nothing, because this is nothing. String nil makes this, which is an empty string. Yeah, okay. So that is pretty much fine, right? So if I insert properties to a tag that happens to look like this, it'll be a string already, tag of some kind, and the properties is an empty string. It should, oh, it's going to put a space there. That's a little annoying, but doesn't break anything. And that's because I had an assumption here, insert props, right? You replace this part in the tag with this string that's a space and the properties and this, right? But that's only, I could actually fix that here. I could do if can you count a string? Yeah, you can. Right, so if count of props is greater than 0, right, then you do this. Otherwise, all you do is nothing, right? So you just pass the tag back directly. So now if I insert props with nothing, there we go. So that's correct. But what if I insert props and there is a property that happens to take the form, oops, ID equals blah, right? Tag ID equals blah. Okay, that looks correct. So we're good there. Wonder if there's like a more concise way to do that. There might be, but this works just fine, so I'll leave it that way, at least for now. So then we're back to, that was just a tangent that I didn't need to go on really, right? So we're at a situation where props can be empty, and here we're at the opening string will, or the opening tag will correctly have the properties plopped in there, this is where things go wrong, because content is going to be a list of stuff, but I don't need that. I actually need to do like checks on it, right? So I could do a conditional I forget how to use cond. Well, let's first let's just start working on some things here. Let's just return content, right? Then I can see how things look. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. If I don't have any content, it's a list that contains nil. If I have that, it's not a list and it's just nil. Ooh, why is that? That's because I have this situation, right? The map and the content are just directly put in there, but there is no content, it's nil. So it ends up showing up as nil without being plopped into a list, which is theoretically fine, but maybe a problem. What if there's a map and there's some content here? Okay, that makes sense to me. That's normal. What if there's now this content? What if this content itself is actually just another, let's make it a div, and this is a paragraph with content. It's the content then is a list of that. Okay. Let me do this. Let's do another one. Another one. Right, that's a list of snippets. That's a list of snippets, that's no problem. Okay, so the only kind of weird case is this one here, which I could just do this maybe. So that now looks the same as something like this. Yeah. So there are any number of situations. Actually, there's one thing I haven't done yet. If I turn this into a list, is that going to look correct? Unmatched delimiter. Maybe if I typed things right, it would be better. List. Close the div, close the function. There we go. Right, so now I have a list of two snippets. So that's not what I need. Let's just see if I can start building things that make sense. Cond clojure.repl/doc of cond takes a set of text or test/expression pairs. It evaluates each test one at a time. If a test returns true, cond evaluates and returns the value of the expression and does not evaluate any of the other tests or expressions. Cond with nothing returns nil. Okay, so that means I just write things like this. So test, and then you run, you write the expression here, test1. So cond true will, if I do that, this will just print true. Or sorry, there's a print test1 because cond here is true, right? So if this is false, and the next thing, the next condition, actually let me do it this way. False, true, this will say test2, right? Test2, yeah. That's pretty straightforward. So let me just if this is the wrong way of doing things, that's okay. It's just kind of learning, right? Always learning. Oh, did I accidentally put too many? I did. I don't need these because those are there actually. Okay. Right, so in the condition where first of content is nil, when not nil, does that return true? Yeah. When not first of content, right? When content is nil, what you can do, program, is give me the string of insert props, o props, and the closed string tag, right? So that handles the case where there is no content, and that should work. Okay, let's see. Oh, if I spelled things right, then it would work. Insert. There we go. Right, so now that is a situation that would look like this. Sweet. It should also be this. Yeah. Okay. That's also cool. There are multiple conditions that are true because I forgot to get rid of this. So it goes sequentially. So it checks this first one's true and it does this, and then it will not do anything else. So as soon as one condition is true, it doesn't matter how many other conditions are true, starting from the first one that you typed in. That's kind of cool. Okay, so we have a situation that's kind of working there. The next situation that can work is right, so if first of content right? Is it true that content will always be a list? Yeah, because I made it that way, right? So it'll always be, so I'll always be pulling things off of that. But if it's true, what I'm thinking about is the situation where I have a list of, like this situation. Let me just make it return content. Right, so this is a situation where first of that result is still a list. Wait, why is it doubly? Oh, is that? Ooh. Oh yeah, I got a bit of a weird thing going on here. Does flatten work? Or will that like completely shoot. Flatten is not what I want. Well, actually, here I can put a little check. If content, otherwise if content, do content, otherwise list content. This is messy. I don't think I like that. But that should prevent things from being massive, like triply nested, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so last time this was triply nested. Yeah. So, no, is that true? This, yeah, okay. So what I've just done is eliminate the case here where this would have been triply nested. So now things are only doubly nested, which means here, first of content, if first of content is a list, then I want to do something else. But before that, I want to work on a simpler thing that looks like this. A paragraph that has text in it. Right now, there, that's that. So let's add another situation that handles that better. Right, so if string, is that a predicate? True. I I did something wrong. Anyway, that doesn't matter. If string first of content, right? If that's true, then what you can do is give me the string of insert. You know what, actually? Here, I'm gonna rewrite O tags so that I'm gonna make O the result of insert props O props, like that. That way I don't have to write this every time. I can just write O. Same here. String of O first content C. I have to check something here with, if I do HTML of a paragraph that contains multiple strings, what does it do? Yeah, okay. Right, so this breaks another one of my assumptions, which was that in the case of content being a string, right, like this is concatenating content together and then running, or it's running the HTML over everything in content, right? I can make this and first content count content 1 equals 1. It's getting messy quickly, and I don't think I'm doing this right. That's okay though. Snip to HTML of paragraph text, right? What? I thought this would work. Oh, it will if I do it right. String first content and right, and string first content and content length is 1, then do this. Yeah. Right, so there we go. And now this, if there's text and some more text, that's not meeting this, right? Which is fine. I'll be right back. I have to check something. I'm back. Right, so before I turn my brain back on, if you're chilling out, just watching this, feel free to talk in the chat, ask some questions, just tell me about your day, any work you're doing, anything like that. That'd be cool. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you. I appreciate that. Feel free to send whispers on Twitch or whatever they're called and give feedback. I want to keep doing this a lot because I really like it, but I want to make it better, right? I know this is pretty bare bones because I'm just starting and learning as I go, right? So any kind of feedback is always helpful. But if you're just chilling there, just listening, don't want to engage, that's totally cool too. I'm just happy that I'm able to be some background noise or whatever. That's always cool too. Either way, I hope everyone is doing all right wherever and whenever they're seeing this. So I actually kind of think let me try to make sense of this so that I right. One list is one string. So now I have a condition where there's a situation where, and it's not a string first, yeah, list. If the first off of content is a list, and it's also not 0. No, if it's just 1, right? That's a situation where you had a doubly nested list. What do you want to do then? That's the question. I want to do something here, right? I actually want to do string of opening tag, oh, not 0, opening tag of snip to HTML of the first of content, right? And then plop that all inside the closing tag. Okay, so that means you're running this whole function on the list of content. Does that make sense? You have to map it. Eesh. Oops, what did I do? What did I do wrong here? Count content here equals 1 and this is the string. That should be right now. No? Still? What's going on with my brain today? Count of content equals 1. That's a predicate. That's a predicate. Close that. That's and. String O with map this. I want to map this function onto this list. Why is this not working? What have I done? Cond. There we go. Yikes. Some days are just hard for the old brain. I also really don't think this is going to be an efficient way to do anything. Empty p tag, text, good, text, more text, nil. Right. The reason for that is because I don't have that condition covered yet, but I theoretically have this condition covered. Nope. Let's see, what am I doing wrong? All kinds of things. All kinds of things. What happens if I do this? Yep. Right. Not first, just map HTML onto content. Okay, so it runs something, but then there's a lazy sequence here. Because, right, in this case, I'm running, that is what happens when I run this here, right? So it strings a map, which is just this. Oops. Right, that's almost what I'm after, kind of. I changed the map to map V. So map works so map works, it takes whatever sequence, so a vector, a lazy sequence, anything like that, and applies the function onto each of its things one at a time, and then puts the result into a sequence, a lazy sequence, which means that it might not get like actually realized, like the values themselves might not be calculated in certain situations. But so map inc onto 1 2 3 will return the lazy sequence of 2 3 4, right? Which is fine. But if I want to do a string of that, I think it'll just say it's a lazy sequence. Yeah, right? But map V does the same thing, except instead of using a lazy sequence, it puts it into a vector, which means it has to calculate every result up front. So that means 2 3 4. So that means if I string this, it will string the results of it, right? So in fact, I wonder if I apply this, will that work instead? No. No, it does not. It would work if I do This is really messy. Does that work? Concat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It might work. So I'm just trying to flatten everything a little bit so that it reads out the way I want it to. Okay, so we have a situation that's working. Whoa, is that right? I have a div that should contain two divs, which is here, a div, open, close, close. Yeah, that's right. So let me now see what happens when I do it like this. This div contains a paragraph that contains text. It also contains another paragraph that contains different text. Okay, so a div contains a paragraph that contains text, and right in line next to it is another paragraph that contains different text. That's looking okay. Now, what if, let's imagine that this div has an ID, blah. Hey, that worked. But let's also imagine that this second paragraph has a class, foo. Whoa. I may have stumbled my way onto a thing that mostly works the way I want it to. That feels kind of nice. But are there cases that it doesn't cover? I can almost guarantee that there are. And those cases would be briefly, does cond support an else? Oh, it does. So this is bad. This should say else. I suppose that actually ends up being equivalent if you just have a true clause at the end versus an else. Presumably though, you could pop the else at the top or something like that if you want to be weird with it. Okay, the only thing this doesn't cover actually is I think the only thing this doesn't cover is I'm not going to worry about it. This implementation, if I can get it working to on stream to do kind of what I want it to, that doesn't mean this is going to be the final implementation. It's probably really boring to stream, but I almost certainly need to just really think about the structure of this to simplify it way down, because I'm almost certain there's stuff that can make this a lot more straightforward that I'm not thinking about right now. But doing that off stream and then putting the final results on GitHub and maybe making a nice concise video about it on YouTube or something would be a better way to go. So right now I'm allowing this to be really messy because that's fine with me at the moment. This is not shippable, I don't think. I want my code quality to be better than this, and that's one thing I want to improve over time. That does mean I need to re-look at this and rethink through things, but doing that on stream is almost certainly boring. So with that aside, the case this doesn't cover is sort of something like this. Wait, maybe this does work. Nope. So this should also not work. Yeah, so the reason that that's not working is this is reaching the else. I could do something like this, maybe. Here, a situation could be just this: string, first content. And we know that the length of the list is longer. What you can do is run string O. First content. This actually has to be wait a second, maybe I don't need this. Maybe I need to do something like this. Here, instead of, maybe I also don't need this. Right, I'm thinking here, so I'm applying string to the concatenation of a bunch of weird stuff. Map v that. But here I can do it this way. I can do first. I can do snip to HTML of first of content. And then here, map v this onto rest of content. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Well, it doesn't work there. Does still work there, right? Contains a paragraph, contains another paragraph, which contains text. That works. Does it work with div containing a div containing a div containing another div containing two paragraphs? Oop, missed something. Hey, yes it does. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 opening tags, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 paragraphs, and then the 4 closing tags. So that's working okay. The only thing it's really not doing well is when there's text Does that make a difference? No. Right, so this situation would be well, let me see here. Do I care enough right now to do this? Because it doesn't technically, it doesn't matter for I don't think it matters for the H or the SVG I'm attempting to generate. Let's find out. Right, so here if I make an SVG that's 500, 500, scale 20, what does that produce? An SVG without content. What's about content? So if I run my HTML over that, does it break? No, it does not. Weirdly though, incorrectly, it made a tag called content, which isn't right. So something's a little bit off there. But let me see what happens. Oh. My watch is telling me to stand up right now. May as well. So, why would it be making a content tag like that? That's a question I don't have an answer to at the moment. It's almost correct though. Why is that doing that? If instead I were to do this, it's not content, let's make a line 0011. Oh, that works. So, no, it doesn't work. It does not work. Shoot. See that? It just plunked it into, oh, that's bizarre. Okay, let me see. Why is that? Well, if we just if we take off this, right, the content is already in a list here. So we've got it would be as if I'm running my HTML on a list that contains line with x1, etc. Right, and that's broken. Snip. Where's my, there we go. Snip to, weesh. Okay, so we have a case that isn't working the way it should be, and that's because of what reason? Right, we're in a situation here. Let me close this, open this. We're in a situation in this case that, well, I have a list of length 1 and the first entry maybe I have to do something kind of like this, and snippet first content and equals count content 1. Then what you're going to do, string o snip to HTML of first content close tag. Unbalanced parens, story of my life. There. Right, so that might work. Well, of course, a list looks like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. Right, so if I map it, it works. But if I don't map it, right, it does this weird thing. And that's because it's already made it to this part here where it destructured this. So key, it assumes this whole thing, right, is a key, and that's why the tag is the whole thing. That's wrong. Why is that happening? That's because I didn't consider that situation. Yeah, that didn't fix it, of course. Right, so off the top, if snippet k if that's true, all you want to do is snip to HTML of k. If that's not true, you have to do this whole rigmarole. I don't like this at all. I'm nesting a cond inside an if, and I don't even know if that'll work. It does. Yeesh. Messy, 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 messy. Does this work? 1. Yep. Okay, so we have a messy function that seems to be working the way that nevertheless seems to work kind of the way I want it to. I might have like needless conditionals here actually. I might be able to collapse all of this into a single thing and then put this properly. So like this actually I could make like an if-let or something like that, which I've never used before. Is it if-let or let if? Is it if-let? Let if? If-let? Yeah. See if that fixes it. Snip to HTML and my HTML are way too messy. Fix them. There, as long as I put it on a list, I can get to it later. That's okay. The thing I wanted to try now, actually, is to see if I could generate what I want to generate without where am I looking at? What am I looking at? Okay, so we have this function make SVG, giving it a name, width, height, scale, blah blah blah. It spits out a function that uses HTML here and gen background. So gen background is where the CSS function exists. So I'm gonna just drop in my CSS here and my HTML here and see what happens. That's what I'm gonna do. That is exactly what I am gonna do. And we're gonna make an SVG that is my implementation. That's the name. The width is 500, no, 100, 100, scales 20. It doesn't work. And why would that be? Well, let's step through things one at a time. Okay, let's see if this works. My CSS works on gen CSS. Oops. Okay, so it doesn't work on this. Gen CSS produces a vector of vectors. If I were to map my CSS over gen CSS, would that work? Yep. Okay, so my CSS right here I want to do if and two clauses I need are if list first, ooh, no. And rules, right? So apply string map rule to CSS of rules. If the first item off of there is a list of length 1, if it's a list and count of that, of rules, is 1. That's not technically good enough. Right, like that could still be true in this case if you pass into my CSS something that's just this, right? That is a list. Oh, no, it's not. Sequable. Right, so we have a problem sort of where this is both sequable and count of this is 1. True. True. Well, actually, let's make a helper predicate here that's, oh, not that. I want implementation helper. Where did I go with this? Snippet. This is messy. Check cond logic and simplify recursion slash make it optimized. Example, use recur macro. Is recur a macro? Clojure dot REPL slash doc recur. Special form, so it's not even a macro, it's probably like written in Java directly, I guess. Does Lumo even have recur? Let's find out. Recur. Can't recur here. Yeah, so that it looks like it does. That's fine. Okay, that was unimportant to what I need right now. Special form. Okay, what I was doing was moving to the helpers here, the snippet predicate, rule snippet or rule predicate is actually going to be even more strict. It's going to be and vector item. So the item has to be a vector. Keyword first of item has to be true, and map of second has to be true for rule, right? So if I define rule line, that's false. This will be true. Yeah. The reason for that is there's no point in making a CSS declaration that's completely empty. So if the rule has no definitions because there's no map at all, then it should fail. And then I can use that predicate here in my CSS if the first of rules is a sequable thing and not rule, not a rule, if that's true, then you actually want to do you want to unwrap it by doing my CSS on first. No, you want to apply my CSS onto the rules like that. If it's not the case, then you just do it normally. Will that work? Let's find out. Gen CSS, right? It produces a vector of rules. So my CSS should now work on that if I'm thinking about it right. I guess it also has to be true that the count is equal to 1. Count of rules null. Stack Overflow. I am being silly. Right, so I just have to think through this line a little better. Oh, well, here, instead of apply, I can just run my CSS on. Since I know that there's only one here, first of rules, I can just do that directly. Still gives me the same problem. What is the first of gen CSS? It is a single line, so if I run rule to CSS on that, does it work? It does. I gotta go to the bathroom. So I'm gonna go do that right now. Back again. Okay. So, maybe this is what I need. I've confused myself yet again today. Right, you don't know how to make a sequence from a keyword. That makes sense. So first of gen CSS, right? It is a rule, right? True. a second. And rules. First of rules is a list or a vector of rules. Rule, this should be false. Wrong number of arguments. What did I do? This is, let's get rid of that. Right, so that's false. Right, so you cannot run, you have to run this basically. The only difference between these two lines should just be, in the case where you've doubly nested it, you have to run it on first of rules like this, and then otherwise you just run it on the rules as normal. Shouldn't that work now? Yeah, there we go. Well, okay, I think that's fine. So let's now save this so that we have something kind of working. Once again, we try to run make SVG. My implementation 100, 120. Hey! It looks as if it worked. So let's go to that page. My implementation.svg. It didn't work. This is not well formed. That's fine. So let's, instead of spitting that out directly, let's do this here. Let's first generate a background of 100, 120. Okay, so we have here an SVG structure with a G in there and a doubly nested list here that has more stuff in it, a style tag, with the type, and then the text, and then a list of lines and rectangles and stuff, which should be fine. What's this here? Yeah, okay, so if I run my HTML over that, it's going to be wrong, but why is it going to be wrong? That's what I need to look into. Okay, so we have a very confusing looking thing. Let's try to make this a little more beautiful. Let's string/replace from this whole messy string, we're going to match this and replace it with a new line between there. And then we're going to print line. Okay, we have something in the realm of readable. Okay, so we correctly have the closing SVG and closing G tag, right? SVG and G. We incorrectly have everything else. Now, why might that be? Let's find out. So if I look at generate background, right here we have SVG with a list of SVG style. Let's start there. What does SVG style look like? That's a function that I wrote. Yeah. Let's assume the string's empty. Okay, so that's that C data thing. If I run my HTML over that, does it produce a valid thing? Style type is that containing C data, new line, ending style. Okay, so that works. Does it also work if I generate background data 120? Okay, that's just a list of lines and rectangles. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Does my HTML work on that? No, it does not. And the reason for that is because it's doing so it is running into, it looks like this branch. No. Well, what? So we know it can't be this because its content is non-nil. Okay. Right? Oh. No, that's because, so this is wrong here. Right? So and snippets. What does this look like here? Right, it's a doubly nested list. I have to do, okay, my HTML, I need to have the same concept as my CSS, right? It has to check this. It has to do the predicate, and then it has to do this. So let me copy that as a reference. Here. Right, so and snippets, make this predicate if and sequable first of rules equals count rules 1. It won't be rules, it'll be snippets. And not snippets. Okay, when that's true, am I thinking about this correctly? We'll find out soon enough. Right, so if the first of snippets is sequable and it's not a snippet, yeah, okay, this should be good. This should be good. Let's close that. We just need here apply string to map snip to HTML of first of snippets. Wrong number of args. What did I do? What? Count. I'm always goofing up the parentheses here. Probably there's a plugin that makes that easier. Okay, now my HTML correctly works over this list of data. Perfect. Now, obviously, right, if my idea here only destructure, like it only undoes one level of nesting, right? So if I pop this into a list, this will still break. Right. So first of all, here, both my CSS and my HTML only unnest one level. The same problem occurs with deeper nesting. The logic I used needs rework. Theoretically, I can make a recursive function that handles things appropriately. Right? So I'm not actually solving problems, I'm just stepping around them. So let's check in on the generator. Right, so this works now. The gen background won't work if I have no arguments. That's still that. So if I run my HTML on gen background 100, let's make this even easier. 50, 50, scale 10. same problem. And that's because okay, so we have we've got actually, let me see here. Right, if I don't list this, oh no. What happens if I do this? Gen background data. Gen background 50, 50, 20. Okay. Run my HTML on that. Still wrong. And that's because if I copy just this G here, that should also fail, I think, right? If I run my HTML on that part, now if I were to take this in a level, yeah, I need to fix. All right. This is not working the way I want it to right now because I'm not doing it right. I need to study up on recursion a little better and actually figure out a proper implementation. I haven't had lunch yet. It's getting a little late for lunch. And I have to stop doing this because right now my head's not in the game. That's okay. I will have time like off stream to really nail this down. I hope to have better implementations and better explanations ready to go for tomorrow's stream. And tomorrow's stream, I want to be able to finish, if I can, this program to a state that's kind of workable, and then get back to the work that I've been doing standing point on my little desk design here, because I don't want to abandon this. This is a more substantial library that I'm working on anyway, so I want to be able to keep going with this, with the 3D rendering and stuff like that. So that'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a little bit of this and a little bit of this, basically. But for right now, that's all I've got. Thanks for spending some of your time watching. I'm going to be doing this all month, every day, and after that, I'm going to be doing it very regularly. The schedule, I'm not sure of, but for the time being, it's every day programming, 12:30 till 2:30 or 3:30. So 2 to 3 hours of programming every day. And then occasionally in the evenings I play a little bit of my Switch because I have a games library that I don't have opportunity to get around to all the time. So if I have a stream to do, then I'm more compelled to play. So I usually do that kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday kind of thing in the evenings. So all this month is a lot of streaming content because I got to get into that groove. So long way of saying I'm going to be gone now, but I'll be back at 12:30 tomorrow doing some more programming. So hope everyone has a good time.